Okay, let's dive that is straight in. And this week we're focusing on investing through your SMSF with Anthony Landahl from Equilibria Finance. Anthony, SMSF, that always gets people's attention here in Australia. That's a huge a part of how people manage their finances. Talk to me about investing in property through SMSF.
Yeah, well, back in around 2007, the government introduced some rules around what's called limited recourse borrowing arrangements, which enabled people with an SMSF to essentially gear into property. So it has become quite a popular part of a diversified portfolio within a self-managed super fund. I guess what's critical around understanding that is the rules and definitions around what can be done within the fund, within the property, the use of the property, residing in the property are very strict. So you've got two types of investments, fundamentally into residential property, where there's some very strict rules around not being able to reside in the property, must meet the sole purpose test of providing retirement funds, and you can't have related party members as renting or residing in it. There's a little bit more flexibility with commercial premises where for example, a self-employed business owner might use that property for his business. It still needs to meet the sole purpose test of providing retirement income.
Yeah, well, apart from those rules that you were talking about, is because I was reading up on it, it seems like there has to be, for example, a minimum balance of $180,000 to be able to purchase a property, annual contribution of at least $15,000. So what are those just basics that someone needs to have if they want to start into this?
Yeah, the typical sort of investor you see is going to have a minimum of balance of around $200,000. Cash flow is a critical consideration separate to managing the property, the loan repayments, maintenance, ongoing cash flow if your repayments are more than your rent. You've obviously then got potential contributions you're making to your super fund. You potentially have pension payments going out from the super fund, the cost of managing a super fund. So keeping a cash flow balance is pretty critical within the fund, but you tend to get your investors with a balance of at least $200,000 to be able to actually leverage into a property. That's whether it's a commercial or a residential property. And there are some rules around that if people are borrowing, around maintaining a cash flow balance in your super fund once the property's been purchased for those sort of contingencies as well.
Yeah, is it complicated to get into this? And following on from that, what are the risks and rewards then?
Yeah, it's not complex in the sense of there's just rules that need to be understood by the trustees. So if someone's thinking of setting up a self-managed super fund, they should be seeking some financial advice to make sure it's in their best interest, but also to make sure they understand their obligations as a trustee. The difference from, say, a retail fund or a corporate superannuation fund will be that you're actually managing the investment decisions. So property can form part of a diversified portfolio with shares, with managed funds and property. So you're in control of your portfolio or your superannuation, which can be one of the benefits. Some of the other benefits are in and around the tax effectiveness of it. If you're still contributing to your super, the rent, for example, is taxed at 15%. If you've held the property for over 12 months, the capital gains are taxed at 10%, and the interest payments are also able to offset, as distinct from negative gearing, offset the income generated, and those tax offsets can be carried forward. So there are some tax benefits. Once you're in retirement, the rent's actually tax-free as well as any capital gains as well. You are in control of your investment portfolio. Probably the risks are around not understanding your obligations. There is more burden around compliance. Cash flow management is obviously important, and you are more limited in how you can utilise the property. For example, even with renovations and using borrowed funds to improve the property if you've borrowed to leverage into it.
Okay, let's balance that with the rewards then. What are the returns like, and especially in this environment?
Yeah, well, essentially you're managing it where you're putting it out to market for rent. You're just limited in obviously not being able to use it as a holiday house or rent it yourself. So if you've got strong rental yields, strong capital growth, you're going to get them over time. Probably a main consideration is the cost of borrowing can be higher. So the cost to hold the property while it's within the fund can be a lot higher because of your interest repayments might be higher. The lending environment tends to be you're paying principal and interest for the property. So your cost to hold might be higher, but you will get some tax benefit on the way through, as well as ultimately when you sell the property or you move into retirement phase.
Would this be the high risk, high reward type of investment to look at right now?
It's going to come down to the property you invest in. It's more making sure you're managing your cash flow. It's not particularly more risky than a mum and dad investor using a gearing strategy outside of superannuation. It might be more risky if you're not managing your cash flow, if you don't understand the rules around managing a property within your self-managed super fund. But it can be a good, effective part of a diversified portfolio in a super fund, particularly if you're a small business owner. For asset protection, you have the asset outside, away from your business. And also, as a small business owner, they do allow you to use that business to run your premises out of. As long as it's market rates, you're paying your rent, and you're running it like a commercial premises. So there's definitely some upside from that perspective as well for business owners.
All right, very quickly before we go, first steps. Like if someone watched you saying this and said, oh, I'd like to get into that, first steps.
First steps is understand what a self-managed super fund is, understand how to set one up, and then set one up. Once it's then established, you can look at making sure you've got enough balance and contributions to be able to leverage into property, or establish a diversified portfolio with a managed fund. But probably initial from the outset, make sure you understand your obligations as a trustee of a self-managed super fund and seek financial advice.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Anthony. Very interesting prospect as well, bringing it to the table. All right.